We are at the 2016 Ripcord Association reunion in Springfield, Missouri. We're talking now with Jerry Moyer of Bella Vista, Arkansas, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Jerry, start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born right here in Springfield, Missouri in 1948, October 13.
Okay. Did your family live in Springfield or in the area somewhere? Or?
Yes, lived over on the north side of town.
Okay. And did you grow up here?
I grew up till I was here till let me think, about 1958.
Mm-hmm.
My dad died, and my mom remarried shortly after that, and we moved to Omaha, Nebraska, and that's where I went to high school, and that's where I entered the service. It was up in Omaha.
Okay. And did you graduate from high school?
Yes.
Okay. When did you graduate?
1966 was my year.
Okay. And what did you do after you got out of school?
I spent about a year working at a grocery store up there, and I worked full time, and didn't have any rent or anything like that. So I thought I was making good money, but I had a motorcycle and a GTO, and I kept getting little tickets. And I had 4 tickets in 1 month, and the judge told me, if I see you one more time, I will do everything in my power to get your license. And this buddy I used to run with up there, we decided, you know, we've been talking about going in the service. Let's go do it because we don't have a future here no more. It's going to happen. Get another ticket. And we went down to the recruiter, signed up, and it was my buddy's idea. He said, we want to go Airborne Ranger. And yeah, what the heck, go in on the buddy system. We did our physical and came back like 3 days later, and he told me, he said, I got good, called me in first. No, he called my buddy in first. And when he left, he went out the door, didn't even come back and see me. But when I went in there, the guy said, I got good news and bad news. Bad news is we're not going to take your buddy. He's got a health issue. And the good news is we're going to take you. And then he says, now do you still want to go Airborne Ranger? And I said, no, I don't think so. And I told him I had an uncle that worked for the phone company. And have you got anything along them? And he said, we got a wonderful we can get you climbing telephone poles, string and wire. And I said, that's what I want to do. I'm going to go on. I'm going to go ahead and go in. And they kept their word on that. I went to basic training at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. The irony of that's the home of the 101st.
All right. Now, before we get into that, to back up a little bit, so the physical that you took was actually a serious physical then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because some people suggest that what they got was, can you walk and breathe kind of thing.
Oh, no. They
not the
had
one you
doctors
did.
poking around prodding on us.
Okay. All right. And how much did you know about Vietnam at the point when you signed up?
Not a clue. Not a clue. And matter of fact, I didn't even, I didn't think there was any chance I'd be going off to some war somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's how young and dumb I was. I didn't realize that's what the Army's in the business for. But
all right. So you were just going as a thing to do and
get it out of the way. The draft was going on then. I said, got to do this anyway.
Right. Okay. So now, when did you show up at Fort Campbell for basic training?
That would have been the early September, and like I said, we'd be out there. We thought they were trying to kill us, but we would see these airborne guys. We might march to the rifle range. These guys ran to the rifle range and might even do a circle around us. And I thought, this is unreal. What them guys? Well, I didn't think we had it so bad. But did our 8 weeks of basic, and
Now, before we move on from basic, I'll just cover a little bit more for people who don't know. What do you actually do in basic training?
you get a series of shots. Just something they do, vaccination type things, and you learn how to march. It's as simple as that sounds. You got to learn how to do it, and you got to learn who to salute and who not to salute. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, they let you handle a rifle, and you get to play with it for about a week, and then they finally take you to a rifle range and you get to fire that weapon. And things are going better then. It's an 8-week course, and when you're in the 4th or 5th week, they start to treat you a little nicer. I mean, they still call you trainee, and they ain't got a name for you. And but they do start to treat you a little, and you learn the discipline. There's a chain of command, and you better respect it. You learn how to clean that barracks, and you can never clean it good enough for them. You'll clean it twice, and then they might let you off then.
Now, how easy or hard was it for you to adjust to all of that?
Me personally, I didn't have any trouble at all. I mean, I wasn't one of the fastest runners, but I wasn't the slowest. And my foot locker and bunk might not have been the best, but it wasn't the worst. I was just kind of a middle of the road person, and it kept me out of trouble. I mean, I learned real quick, you don't talk in the chow line. And matter of fact, we weren't even allowed to talk when we were eating back then. But I adjusted, I think, pretty well. It didn't bother me too much. I mean, I could do the physical stuff.
Okay. And as far as you know, were the other guys you were training with other enlistees, or were there draftees mixed in?
We had some of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you kind of progress through the training, you get into some weapons training, things like that, and gradually, and stuff kind of comes together. The drill instructors behave a little bit better.
Yep.
And then that's an 8-week course.
8-week course,
Okay.
and there's classroom activity all throughout all this stuff. And just various military things that you need to know. Booby traps, and you do a little. You get a little bit of schooling on everything, and again, it's associated with war.
All right. And what do you do then after basic?
When you graduate from basic, they have a little ceremony, big parade field, and now you're not a trainee no more. You're a real soldier. You can pass basic, you're a soldier. But they assign you where your next duty station is, and you get an MOS, and the MOS is that's your new job, your new title. And if you go to that advanced infantry training school and pass, you actually get that MOS. And mine was 36 Charlie, and that's a signal MOS. And my next duty station was Fort Gordon, Georgia. And that's they got whacked down there, and they got a school for MPs. But that's where I learned to climb telephone poles and string wire and ride a little cable car. They had about 8 poles set in a row that weren't 20 feet apart, but you had to climb up that, set the little cable car on there, and then you had to, from your gaffs, you had to get in that thing and not, break your neck. And it wasn't up that high, probably. I don't think it was quite 20 feet, but it was at least 15 feet. I mean, it hurts you if you'd have fell. But you go over to the next pole, and you get out and get on the pole, grab your cable car, and set it on the neck. And when you go through that's how you pass that little course.
Okay. And so you got through that all right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
Climbing didn't bother me a bit. I've never climbed. It
Just came naturally. All right. Now, eventually you wind up in Vietnam in an infantry unit. But did you finish that training course and then with that designation? So were you
What?
a signals guy or?
Well, I've got a signal MOS, but then they sent me to Fort Leonard Wood for an advanced signal course, and I think that only lasted about 6 weeks. But we went there and did that one, and then we got our next orders to our duty station, and mine was Germany, and I spent 1.5 years in Germany.
Okay.
And I was attached to a mechanized infantry unit, and I had that signal MOS the whole time, except right at the end, I got promoted to buck sergeant. Well, the slot that was available to me was an infantry slot. So my MOS changed when I got them 3 stripes. And now Sergeant Moyer is, we had a bulletin board in our company area, and I got to looking at it too, but they had what they call a levy. Have you heard this term?
Yeah, and so they're recruiting or they're reassigning people. They draw them
Reassigning
out of
people.
one unit,
Yeah.
put them in another. Yeah.
They had the list, hey, the levy guys would come down and they'd say, the levies came down. And you'd go up there and there'd be a whole bunch of names on there. And I think it was from the whole battalion that you were attached to. And the levy usually meant you're going to Vietnam. It's a new duty station.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have been Korea, but most of the time it was to Vietnam. Well, I no sooner got these E5 sergeant stripes, and my name popped up on there. And I had my wife over there, and I had orders to leave, I don't know, in 6 weeks or something like that. But my wife was pregnant. They wouldn't let her fly. So I got a deferment.
Mm-hmm.
And when the baby came, and I think they had to wait 2 months they didn't want the baby flying until it was 2 months old. The 2 months came up, I sent her home on an airplane, and then I don't know exactly how long after that, but 4 or 5 months went by, and I said, they forgot me. Lo and behold, they haven't forgot me. The orders came down again, and I requested a leave, 30-day leave. And when that leave was up and my 8 to 10 days travel time to get to my next duty station on the way to Vietnam, I only had 10 months to go in the service. And I kept thinking, they're not going to take me. They was happy to get me, and I went to Vietnam, and when I landed there, I had 10 months to go.
Okay, to back up a little, talk a little bit about the time you spent in Germany. What unit were you with there? What were you doing?
I was assigned to the 4th Armored Division, and it's a little town called Crailsheim,
Mm-hmm.
and we had 2 battalions on that post. There was our mechanized infantry unit, and there was an artillery unit there, and they were capable of firing, I don't know what the proper term is, they could do a nuclear strike,
Mm-hmm.
but not nothing big. I don't even know how to say this. They were small nuclear weapons.
Right, because they were like, as in that could be fired out of artillery pieces?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
Tactical nuclear devices.
Whatever that word is, yeah, that's right. And they had our infantry battalion were there to protect them when we deployed. And Germany was good duty. Got to go on passes pretty regularly and go out on the economy and see the castles and the food, the guest houses. The food was just excellent over there. And I'm sure it's changed, but you order a meal over there and you think they brought all this food for me and my wife, and who else is going to be eating with us? Big plates of steamed potatoes and a huge bowl of salad. Good gosh. And they were almost acted offended if you didn't eat it all. But
Now, when had you gotten married?
I got married in AIT in '68, February. And she stuck with me all these years.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're on number 48's coming up.
All right. And so then she was able to go. Now, did she go with you to Germany, or could she come out once you made sergeant, or how did that work?
No, I went to Germany alone.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I got there, I checked into what I had to do to get off-post privileges.
Mm-hmm.
Live off-post. Right. And they told me what I had to do, and I went down and I found a place to rent, and I rented it. And they approved all this, and I wrote home, hey, get on a plane, get over here. We got a place to live.
Mm-hmm.
So we was over there 18 months.
Okay. So when do you actually go to Vietnam then?
Okay, we came home from Germany, and I don't know if there were riots going on all across the country.
It's 1968, yes.
And I remember when I got on the plane here in Springfield, Missouri, we were going to stop at Kansas City, and it was a night flight, and I remember they came on the loudspeaker and they said, if your destination is not Kansas City, do not leave the terminal. There's a National Guard forces out, and I remember flying into that airport. You could see fires burning.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, okay, I stayed in the airport and got on the next plane and went to Fort Lewis, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Spent a couple weeks there. That's the first time I ever had an M16 in my hand. And what a neat little rifle. We'd always had M14s up to then.
Now, by this time, had they gotten the M16 functioning well enough so you could use it without jamming, or?
Okay, I'm going to skip a lot to tell you about that. When I left Vietnam, when they threw me on that medevac to take me home, or take me to the hospital, up until that time, I never had a malfunction with my M16. I thought it was a wonderful weapon.
Okay. All right, because it got better over time. All right, so we go back, and some people didn't have trouble to start with. So anyway, so we're going to go back here. So basically you're at Fort Lewis. So were they training you on the M16 just to kill time, or was there something they wanted to do for people going to Vietnam?
I don't think it was just to kill time.
Okay.
I think I think they possibly realized there was a lot of soldiers that never had an M16 in their hand, because that's when they was converting over from the M14.
Right.
But we were there for 2 weeks. We did some training on booby traps and contraband that we're going to run into over there in Vietnam. And it just lasted 3 weeks, or 2 weeks anyway.
Okay. So to some extent it was an organized program and not just what you're doing while you're waiting. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
And then what kind of plane do you fly on? Is it commercial or military?
When that was done and they said go down, get on the bus and go to the airport, it was a commercial plane. And we landed in Hawaii and dropped a passenger or two off there. And wasn't there in Hawaii very long at all, but took off again and landed at Wake Island and dropped a couple of people off there. And they came on the speaker, says, we're going to be here for about an hour. If you want to get off, and there's a monument over here somewhere, if you can read about the battle that was here and all that. And I did get off, and Wake Island, I tell you what, if somebody spit in the ocean, I believe they'd have a tidal wave. There is no high point on that island. But anyway, we got on the plane and we went to Guam. And then from there we went to Tan Son Nhut Air Force Base outside Saigon.
Right. Okay. Now at this point, do you know what unit you're going to, or are you going to find out after you get there?
I'll tell you about my heart getting broke. We had a couple of weeks of training. That was the search training. And when it was all over, they had a big parade field. And across the parade field, they had trucks and buses. And all of them had emblems on them, or a cardboard sign in the window, this is First Cav or whatever. And then they had a little tower up there about 10 or 15 feet, and a guy with a bullhorn. And he would call your name and tell you what unit you're going to. And there was about 1,000 of us. And there was one other guy there with my last name, and I remember they said Sergeant Moyer, 101st Airborne. Ain't me, I ain't never jumped out of no plane. It's going to be the other guy. Well, nobody stepped forward. And these drill sergeants, or sergeants, you know how they are when nobody responds to them. It was Sergeant blah, 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 serial number, 101st Airborne. And I said, my God, that's me. And I grabbed my duffel bag, and I always remember this, going across that parade field to that bus, and I felt like a kid that had just seen his puppy ran over. I am down in the dumps. What are they going to do? Hey, this is the real thing. Them guys are, I mean, I've heard of the 101st, and I went to basic training with all around them. I got over to the bus, and I asked the driver, I said, driver, they made a mistake with me. I've never jumped out of a plane in my life. And he promptly reassured me, we're not jumping, we just need infantry replacements. And I thought they ran over my other dog then. I was so down in the dumps that day, it was just unreal. And
So at this point, you didn't really know what the 101st had been doing in Vietnam. You
No.
just were thinking about jumping out of airplanes and then being stuck being infantry.
Yeah, and I have no idea what are they going to use me for. I mean, this driver said they're going to use you as an infantryman.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I do remember going up there, and I don't remember what movie it is about Vietnam, and it might be Hamburger Hill. But at the start of that movie, they show some new guys coming into country and some old guys leaving.
They do that in Platoon, I know.
Is it Platoon?
Yeah.
Okay. But they talk about don't go to the A Shaw. I hope you don't have to go to the A Shaw. I remember these guys. What the hell is the A Shaw?
Mm-hmm.
And guess where I spent 8 months? In the A Shaw Valley. And I realized what they were talking about. But went up to Fubai,
Mm-hmm.
and promptly got introduced to a night attack. It wasn't serious, but there's sirens are going off and the lights are all being shut off, and it was a rocket attack. And I can remember seeing. They told us later it's these 122 rockets, rocket about 6 foot tall, and you can see them flying across the sky. You can see the sparks and stuff, and I thought, wow, is this what war is really like? I didn't know what war was like. And I don't have a gun now. They haven't issued me a weapon. I'm just sitting in a barracks with a bunch of guys. We ain't got nothing but our fists to fight with. But anyway, I went over to Camp Evans after that and got introduced to my first sergeant. And he said, the guys are out in the field, but there's a stand down coming. I didn't know exactly what a stand down was. But he said, they'll be coming in a couple of days, and we'll get you situated with your company, not your company, your platoon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I met my guys.
Okay. So what company were you assigned to?
I was assigned to Charlie Company, 2nd Platoon, and I was actually 2nd Squad.
Okay. And then which battalion, regiment?
2nd Battalion, 506th Infantry Division.
No, regiment. That's the regiment. The 101st Airborne Division.
101st Airborne Division, that's
Yeah.
right. The regiment was 506.
Yeah, we just want to officially get all that down on the record. That
And
way.
3rd Brigade.
Right. Okay. So how long did you spend at Camp Evans before they got back in, do you think?
It's just 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
And I was very pleased when the guys did come in, and again, I was pleased, but here again, I'm nervous, because they said, you're going to be a squad leader. You're a sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
And they introduced me to my squad, and I mean, these rascals looked tough. But they were a good bunch of guys, and I more or less said, I'm green as a gourd. When it comes to what you guys are really doing out there, help me out, and then we'll go from there. And they did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't get bossy with them, or we're going to do this and that. No, we're not doing. I did not do that. I let them lead me the first few weeks, and you get the hang of what you do. It's just repetitious. You go searching out in the jungle. Gets lunchtime. You stop and you set up kind of a position that you could defend if something would happen. You eat your food. Put your rucksack back on. You go out looking some more, and at nighttime you put your claymore mines out. Come back in and cook your food and write your letters, and then set up your guard shifts. Every night you got to pull guard. And in my squad, we pull guard at least 2 times a night, and most of the time 3 times a night, because it'd be 3-man guard positions, and you dark daylight.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of hours in there.
How many men in the squad?
8,
Okay.
sometimes 9, mostly 8. Somebody was always off on R&R, or somebody was going home. So 8 or 9.
Okay. And when did you actually join these guys? Kind of what month or?
Oh, it's November, just before Thanksgiving.
Okay, so November '69. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So actually, when we were talking before about coming back and doing riots and things like that, that would have been kind of summer of '69, early fall, or somewhere in there.
When I went,
You were talking about being flying from Springfield to Kansas City and staying in
Oh
the
yeah,
airport.
I see what
So
you're,
that's,
I see what
that's
you're
I
getting.
guess early, somewhere in the fall of
November.
'69. Yeah.
It probably would have been September. I'm
Yeah.
just guessing at the
Yeah.
month that I did that in.
Okay. All right. So anyway, we've gotten ourselves to November of '69. You've joined your unit. You're starting to go out into the field. And where were you operating?
We were operating in what they call I Corps. I Corps is the northernmost part of South Vietnam. It starts, the northern edge of it is the DMZ, and it goes south of a town called Da Nang and over to the Laotian border and all points in between.
Right. And then specifically within that, you mentioned going to the A Shaw Valley. So is that where you were operating?
That's where I operated at, in the A Shaw Valley. I was wounded in my 8th month, and the previous 7th months was all spent in the A Shaw Valley.
Okay. So what was going on there militarily or whatever at the time you got there? Was there much enemy activity or was it quieter?
When I was over there, there was right at 100 GIs a month dying in all of Vietnam. And the first month I was over there, I don't remember experiencing anybody in our company dying.
Mm-hmm.
But every now and then you'd hear about somebody got it over in Bravo Company, I was over there a couple of months before our company actually took any casualties.
Mm-hmm.
We had to send home in a body bag. But and I'm thinking, how unlucky was that guy and all this, and we did a lot of searching and finding nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've jokingly, and I hate to trivialize what I'm saying, it was a big camp out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went I know there was times I went 2 weeks without firing my weapon, but when you did fire it, things got exciting. Most firefights lasted less than 10 minutes, 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. So will these just be a handful or a couple of...
Trail watchers is what we call it.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a camp down the trail a quarter mile or something, and they're just the advanced warning if something goes wrong.
All right. So we have you at this point in Vietnam. You've shown up at the end, and you've gone out in the field at the end of the year in '69. You said you kind of got there before Thanksgiving. Were you on Thanksgiving Day? Do you remember if you were in the field or on a fire base or?
Absolutely remember where I was at. We were in the foothills west of Camp Evans, and then the mountains were just beyond us. They sent out a helicopter on Thanksgiving Day, and it had these coolers that had cranberries in this one, mashed potatoes in this one, gravy in this one, turkey and dressing in this one, and they even sent some milk out, and that was a very, very rare thing to have. I know as far as the food went, I actually craved milk or something sweet,
Mm-hmm.
because we just didn't have that. And but it was a very good meal, and a couple hours later, choppers came back out and picked up all that stuff, and we're back to eating sea rations again.
Right.
But it was a good break. I mean, I don't know who in the rear organized that or said they had to do this, or they did it just because it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But they did do it, and it was very nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was something commonplace in the 1st Cavalry Division because they had lots of helicopters. It varied for a lot of other units, and sometimes the food came in and it had already spoiled, so you got lucky.
I guess I did. Yeah.
All right. Now, who was your company commander when you joined the unit? Do you remember?
I believe his name, I'm going to say Lamb.
Because you had a picture of a Captain Lamb in your book, so I expect that was...
I think he was our, and I didn't have enough rank to hobnob with them
Mhm.
people,
Right.
so I didn't break bread with them, and I didn't get to talk to them very often.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember who your platoon leader was?
No.
Okay. Because they also came and went.
I think we called him Queenie, and his name might have been Queen. But
Okay. Now, had your unit been involved in the Hamburger Hill fight before you joined it?
I don't know.
Okay, so they
Well,
didn't talk about
that's
that.
101st. That's a 101st battle, but I don't know if my actual battalion was involved in that or not.
Right. Okay. So you're out there now. My understanding is that you spend some time in the A Shaw, and then some point early in 1970, you were back at Camp Evans or along the coast or up toward the DMZ, or different people from that company have kind of mentioned different places. Do you remember, because you talk about being in the foothills at Thanksgiving, so you weren't all the way in the A Shaw at that point.
Right at the edge of it.
Yeah. So would you kind of go in and out, or just stay there for a while and then get out? Or what do you recall about where you went?
Well, this foothills thing, that was rare. I mean, and the weather was different right there because we were in a lower altitude and it was hot. Most of the time, like I say, we're in the A Shaw. At nighttime, I ain't gonna say it gets cold, but it does get cold. And when the rains come, I mean, it is cold. But as far as being back at Camp Evans, I don't know. Every 3 or 4 weeks, we'd get to go to Camp Evans for a 3-day stand down, and that was a break. You didn't have to pull guard duty at night. You got to sleep all night, which that was very unusual. We got to sleep all night, but I never went to the DMZ. Just basically just 25 miles due west of Camp Evans is where I was at, within a I don't know, 5-mile circle.
All right. Now, one of the things that happened with your particular company was that there's sort of several changes of command, or a couple of them anyway, while you're there. And a Captain Vasquez would have come in at some point early in 1970. What impression did you have of him?
Like I said before, I didn't hobnob with these guys. They're more ranked than I want to be associated with. But we learned to respect Captain Vasquez. He was not going to let us get in too big a jam. I mean, we might get into a problem, but you could tell this man here, he knew what to do about it. He didn't have to call for help. He knew what to do. Yeah, he can get us out of it. Captain Vasquez, he was a soldier.
Right. And did anything in terms of what you did in the field, did he change the way you did anything, or were things more subtle than that?
When Captain Vasquez took over, probably the biggest change I remember that from what we normally did, we looked harder for the enemy with Captain Vasquez. I mean, the other, you might not have to do a lot of searching, and then do that for 3 or 4 days, and maybe a helicopter pick you up and take you to the other side of the ridge, and you do it again. But Vasquez, we covered a lot of ground with that man.
Now, he talks about never wanting to use trails. Is that what you recall? Did you have to cut your own way, or?
I don't remember that particular thing, and maybe somebody that was with us does remember that. I do remember we did make a lot of trails, but I had never thought of it that he kept us off of established trails. I do remember we found trail markers when we were on trails. And that was kind of a scary thing that, somebody's put signs up saying something. And
so that's basically to give the North Vietnamese directions for when they're using the trails.
Yeah, this trail here is good. This one's booby trapped. I mean, and I don't know exactly, but I do remember seeing these little chop marks in the trees, and the trail goes 2 different ways.
Okay. Did you have any Vietnamese with you in your company? Did they have a Chu Hoi or somebody?
We had a Chu Hoi. Our platoon had one, and Hap was his name, or that's all I ever knew him by. And he was quite. We trusted him.
Mm-hmm.
He. I do remember one of these trail markers. He said, no. I forget the language he used,
Mm-hmm.
but he talked in Vietnamese. No, we don't want to go that way, and we didn't.
Okay. So he seemed to know at least something about what was going on out there?
Oh, absolutely, he did. I mean, and I can understand that. I mean, once the North Vietnamese soldiers came down there, I mean, they had a set of trail markers, and it was good. It was good for anybody
Mm-hmm.
in their outfits that came by this. So it wasn't a real secretive thing.
Mm-hmm.
The way what these trail markers meant.
Okay. Right. So you kind of go in November, December, January, February, March. You're kind of doing pretty much the same thing.
Well, during that period when the monsoons came,
Okay.
that was ugly. We got socked in, and we're just the rain is just you can't describe it. It's I mean, when the season started, every day at 2:00 it's raining, and a few days later it seems like it starts at noon, and then it just progresses over that first month until it's literally raining all day long,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes on for 3 or 4 weeks, and then it tapers back down. But up there in the mountains, it was normal time. It was cold at night. I mean, during the monsoon season, it's a wonder we didn't catch pneumonia out there, because we're wet all the time, and I don't remember anybody ever catching pneumonia. Come to think of it, leeches were bad. I mean, good gosh. And when I was before I went over to Vietnam, I can remember swimming in a creek, and you might get a little old leech, ½ inch or 1 inch long on you, and it's just curls your skin, think this thing's sucking blood out of me. And we get over there, and they got these leeches that live on dry land. I mean, you're going up the side of a mountain, and these things are crawling on you. And I don't know what they do when they bite you. They deaden the skin or something, because most of the time you don't feel them chewing on you. What you feel is when they're bloated and grotesque, and they fall off of you and they roll down your pants leg. That's what you feel. They're full. They've had enough. I do remember this, and this is probably kind of a GI will find a way to goof off or have fun one way or another. And we had this mosquito repellent. If a leech was on you, you could squirt that on him, and he would fall off. But the repellent kind of burnt where the blood was. But we'd catch one of these leeches, and we'd find a rock or something, and put him right in the middle of it, and put a circle of this insect repellent around him, and watch him try to get out of that. And, I mean, it's just silly, stupid stuff, but it was entertaining. We didn't have much entertainment out there.
All right. Now, most of the time when you were in the field in this period, did you operate in individual platoons, or have the whole company together, or break down in squads? I mean, was there a normal procedure?
In my outfit, we operated in company strength rarely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we might move into an area and the whole company's there, but this platoon goes over this way and this platoon goes. And when we were in platoon, I was in platoon strength a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But every now and then you could tell somebody from up above, the Captain Vasquez or somebody's called down, send a squad out here on an ambush. Or we got a resupply day. Lieutenant Campbell, we need somebody to recon down this side of this mountain to the bottom, cross the river, go up the other side, and turn around and come back. And the next day that's probably where we were going. But I really rarely operated in squad strength,
Mm-hmm.
mostly in platoon strength.
And most of that time, about how many men did you have in the platoon?
25. That was probably, again, we carried more than that, but there was always somebody in, they've smashed their toe or something. They're in the rear recovering. They're on R&R. So we were always short. We never had full strength. I never remember. I say that I don't even know what full strength was, but I know we didn't have enough men all the time.
It was a lot larger than what your company had.
Yeah.
So you're like that. Now, starting in the middle of March of 1970, that's when they make their first effort to set up what will become Firebase Ripcord.
That's true.
And initially, this Alpha Company goes in, and then B Company actually
And both
tries.
of them had lots of problems.
Yeah, and they both leave, and we get into April. Now it's C Company's turn to go in.
Yeah, I mean, this, like B Company got fired up, and the next day they told us we're going up there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the, there's a few things in Vietnam I'll never forget. And I call them rotten SOBs. They flew a chaplain out to have communion or whatever, some kind of services for us before we left. I thought, my God, they're going to get us killed. Where are we going?
Mm-hmm.
And I know they said everybody go to the ammo dump, draw extra grenades and more ammo than you normally carry. And we did that, and I do remember virtually every man dropped a letter in the mail sack as we was boarding them choppers. And consequently, we were up there, and we circling around, there's artillery going off down there, and then they brought us in. And we spent that first night on the side of that mountain, and then the next morning, we walked up there and didn't fire a shot. I mean, it was, they'd left. And then the start of the helicopters coming in, bringing concertina wire, and you name it, just everything that hill needed to defend itself.
All right. Now, do you remember if Captain Vasquez was with you on that very first night, or did he come in the next day?
No, I don't remember this.
Okay. All right. Now, what was, as the base is getting established and your company is still up there on top of that hill, what kind of work did you do?
Well, basically we were all told, we've got to make this defendable. And if you weren't digging a fighting trench and a bunker to sleep in, you were out clearing trees and stuff down below, blowing them up, and just making a field of fire that they don't have much to hide behind, and putting more concertina wire up, and getting ammo boxes and building the front of your fighting trench up with them, and the three top layers are full of grenades, and your M16 magazines. And one of the boxes would probably have the firing devices for the Claymore mines, and gosh, we must have had, there was 4 of us in that bunker, and we must have had a dozen Claymores out in front of us, because we weren't packing them around. We were just going up and getting them and keep setting them out. And we dug a hole for a 55-gallon drum that we made food gas out of, and we set 2 Claymores behind it, and then put the can in there and filled it up with the JP4, that's aviation fuel, and I don't remember what else. We mixed stuff with it, sawdust or something.
Somebody suggested it was soap powder or
Soap
something.
powder. I don't remember. We did mix it with something to make it coagulate a little bit, and
Right.
it'd stick to you a little better. But we put 2 Claymores behind it and ran the cord back to a firing position, and that's an impressive thing to see get set off. It'd make me change my mind what I was wanting to do.
Yeah, so you just get this giant burst of flame
Oh.
popping up right in front of you. Yeah. How long do you think you spent on top of Ripcord? At least that first time.
Oh, that first time, shoot. It's probably about 30 days.
Okay.
We spent, and that was good duty. I mean, you weren't out humping around. I mean, the nighttime over in Vietnam, it's the old, there's a song, you curse the darkness and you pray for the light. And it didn't matter if you was on Firebase Ripcord or you was out in the jungle in a small outfit. You know, darkness, I will say this, the darker it was, the safer you felt. Because, I mean, when it's pitch black in the jungle with that triple canopy, you can't move in it without making a lot of noise. So, I mean, that was the safety margin right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's in big moonlit nights. I wrote letters home at 2 o'clock in the morning in the moonlight.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's when you should be more alert, because the enemy can move around and be reasonably quiet.
All right. So you're up there now. During that time, I mean, did the enemy make any effort either to probe position, or did they shoot anything at you while you were up there?
Occasionally, not very much. We might take 2 or 3 mortar rounds one day, and the probing part of it, they could have probed us every night. I wouldn't know any different. But I'm sure they did probe us occasionally. But I don't remember taking any small arms fire while we were there.
Mm-hmm.
No RPGs and direct fire weapons. But they did mortars every 3 or 4 days. Except right when the big battle started. Now that's a different story. All them things I said didn't happen did happen.
Yeah. Okay. But initially, it's fairly quiet, and in some ways, it's
good duty.
Things were going the way they were supposed to.
Yep.
And then after that 30 days, or whatever it is, now your company goes out in the field now.
And we do a patrol, and they rotated us.
Mm-hmm.
Bravo Company or Alpha Company came in, and they did what we were doing. See, this would have been April, and then May,
Mm-hmm.
and then June we went back, and we're up on the hill, and we got some more of this good duty. That's what I called it. And I do remember this. I don't remember if it was our last night on Ripcord or our next to that last night. There was a poker game going on, and it was in one of the bunkers, and we'd jury rig these lights down underneath there. You couldn't see them from outside, but there was, I don't know, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 men down there playing poker. And I didn't have enough money to play poker, but it was entertainment. You get to watch them. And I do remember our captain at that time. He was loaning people money, get them back in the game. He was taking IOUs, and I can vaguely remember him saying something about, this is a car payment. I'm going to make a car payment this month. And this is Captain Hewlett.
Mm-hmm. Because by this time, Vasquez has been taken out of the field because he had been there too long already, and now a new captain has come in to replace him. Did you have much of an impression of Captain Hewitt, or not know him well enough to know anything?
Well, see, we were out in the jungle before we came up on Ripcord, and that's where I first got in contact with him. And we did travel in company strength, a little more with him than we did with Vasquez. But Captain Hewitt carried a pump shotgun and a .22 semi-automatic pistol. And right off the bat, this is odd. You know, what kind of a guy have we got? You've got impressions of a man that does something. I mean, he's going against the rules. You carry an M16 or a machine gun or a grenade launcher or something like that. And here he's got these, and I can remember we're going on another rabbit hunt. We're going off in the jungle, we're looking for rabbits. And I'm going to say, my impression of him, I was not real secure with him leading us. But anyway, in that poker game, I know he won a lot of money. And a lot of it was going to be on payday stakes and that kind of stuff. And then it might have been the next day or the day after that, we went to the ridge line that 902's on. And we landed, I'm guessing, a half mile from it. And we all went in there and we secured the area and did all that stuff. And then the next day we headed towards 902. I mean, I had no idea where our destination was or where they wanted us to go. I mean, we got there and they said, you know, set up camp. And that's that would have been on the afternoon. Wasn't July 1st, it was the day before that.
Yeah, June 30, yeah.
Yeah, we're out there and Ripcord starts taking mortar shells. That fire base is, I mean, this wasn't probing, this is, they've been zeroing in guns for 3 months or 2 months. And these tubes they were hitting ripcord. And, you know, we're saying something's going on. And we're sitting there, a lot of us are watching it. And a Chinook helicopter came into ripcord with a sling load of something. And they had heavy machine guns set up somewhere close because they shot this rascal down. They forced it down, didn't crash and burn right then. And they sent another Chinook out there to sling it up and carry it out of there. Well, they did the same thing they shot it down. And, you know, we're sitting there watching all this and, wow, you know, something's going on. This is unusual. And it was somewhere right in there, we could hear the sound of a mortar tube on the mountain that we're on, somewhere down near the bottom of it. And it's a long ways to the bottom of it. And one of these mortar tubes that's firing on ripcord just right down here. And we're talking this over, you know, we're trying to course where it's at till we can give some directions to them to fire artillery down there. And I don't remember if it was another sergeant or me and just another squad member, but we gathered up a couple of law anti-tank missiles, and we went over to that side of the hill, which is really right where my position was. And I fired one and he fired one, and I'd be foolish to think that we knocked them out. But I do know this, they quit firing.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't think we hit them. I mean, we just randomly shot them. And I mean, this thing's got a range of like 400 meters. And I mean, we're shooting this thing, it's going way over a quarter mile away down the side of that mountain. And I mean, you shoot it and you can count to 10 or 15 before you hear the thing blow up down there.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always said they didn't like us up there pinpointing where their mortar position
Right.
was. And now we've already spent a night there.
Mm-hmm.
And
So now this is July 1st that you're doing shooting because the...
yes, this is July 1st when all this is going on. And I've always kind of guessed they didn't like us being up there pinpointing where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and all during the day, there's jets coming in, dropping bombs, the F-4s, the fast movers, they're coming in. And I've seen some planes I'd never seen before come in there and drop ordnance. But we'd never spent 2 nights in a row in the same place until then. And again, Vasquez wouldn't. I believe if the battalion commander would have told him to sit there a second night, he would have moved us 50 yards, nothing else. I mean, we might still be right there close, but we would have moved.
Mm-hmm.
But we did not move. And they came up and got us that night.
Okay. Now, did you dig new defensive positions or reuse the ones from the night before?
We didn't move. We stayed right where we were.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was modifications made to them and making them better.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we're right in the same place. We didn't move. I mean, we got a captain there with us. We've got 2 lieutenants there with us. And
Did you have, well, you had, Bob Liebeck was one platoon leader.
yeah,
One of the platoons wasn't there.
Jim Campbell, my platoon leader, he was on R&R.
Yeah, but one whole platoon wasn't there either. Is Sergeant Berkey's?
Berkey was on ripcord, yes.
Yeah.
I think he's third platoon.
Yeah, so you got 2 platoons on there.
Yeah.
And.
Under strength.
Yeah, yeah. And then, okay, so there was another officer. And I know there was a artillery forward observer who was up there.
Yeah,
He was
that
new.
was the 3 officers.
Yeah. And you had was one platoon led by a sergeant? No, it was led by a sergeant because Campbell wasn't there.
Right.
Okay. So not very many men to start with.
Yeah, and short 1 lieutenant. And where I was getting at on that, I mean, there's 3 lieutenants there, and who am I to say, hey, we're really not staying here again? I mean, it wouldn't have done any good anyway, I don't think.
Okay. Well, all right. So now gets to be nightfall, and then what happens?
Well, we set up our guard rotation like we've been doing for previous 8 months that I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 3-man positions. There may have been a few 4-man positions, but that was the most men at one position. And the average guard shift at my position was like 1 hour and 15 minutes. And if you got 3 guys there, you can see you're not going to get to sleep just a couple hours, 2.5 hours, and then you're going to be woke up again. And you'll pull about 3 hours or 3 guard shifts in a night. And I remember the platoon sergeant came over and woke me up, and yeah, it's your turn, your guard shift. Well, that's okay, that's cool. And I got up. It's a routine. You grab your rifle and you grab your helmet and you move over by the Claymore firing devices. And we had a radio right there. And I'm listening on the radio. I hadn't been up 15 minutes. It's 3:15 now. And somebody on the hill, and I couldn't identify him, said they had movement out in front of it. This is not unusual. There are animals all over Vietnam, and we've had movement many, many times.
Mm-hmm.
But you pay attention to it. You don't just disregard it and say it is an animal. And I'm listening to that, okay. And somebody else is doing this too. They're saying, hey, I've got movement out in front of me. And it perks your ears up a little bit. Well, now I got movement out in front of me. And I got on the radio and I called the CP. But I don't know if it was Doc Cafferty or who it was I was talking to in the CP, but I said, we've got 3 positions that's got movement in front of them. We need to start waking people up and go to at least a 50% alert, and I'll get back with you. Okay, a minute or 2 passed, and he came back and he says, yeah, start waking people up. I laid the mic down and I started crawling back to where that sergeant was, and all hell broke loose as I started over there. In his position, there were 3 men, and 2 of them were killed. The 3rd one is a missing in action guy. And I'm just speculating. When we got overrun, and I'm just speculating again, I think that position there is where they overrun us from.
Mm-hmm.
But when they left, I think they may have drugged this man off, thinking it was one of their own, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And I know if you lose somebody in combat, it's a very demoralizing thing. And they may have been thinking along them lines. I really don't know.
Yeah, they had a policy of trying to recover their bodies, and part of it was they didn't want us to know how many.
And they were human beings. They worshipped, they bowed down to God, and they believed in the hereafter and all that, so they tried to recover their bodies too. But all 3 of them men were wiped out right immediately.
Mm-hmm.
RPG or something, I don't know, it could have been a big satchel charge, something blew up right there in there, and then plus the captain and his position was hit immediately. And this gets back to, I really think they were probing us in the daylight, and they probably couldn't believe their good fortune when we stayed there the 2nd day, and they've really got us probed, because I mean they hit the CP, and that just wasn't a random shot. And plus that one position, they took it out. And I don't know who it was over there at that position. They did not die immediately. Ripcord was firing illumination for us, and when the lights were all up and burning, things got real quiet. And I mean, you look around, you see these shadows moving from that parachute coming down, and that makes the shadows move.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, your eyes are just going back and forth. You know, what, something moved there, now it's just a shadow. But they did not keep the illumination up continuously. They mistimed it a little bit, and sometimes the lights would go out. And when
All right, this tape is about up, so we're going to pause right here, and then. Now we've gotten you to the point of the onset of the attack on Hill 902, like as early morning hours, July 2nd, 1970. So the first blast has gone off in your sector, the hole that you were just very close to. And you're talking about there's illumination rounds dropping and the enemy moving around someplace. So what did you do yourself after that blast once the attack started?
I threw 2 hand grenades. That's the first thing I did. I mean, there's things you do in combat when something's happening. Every night when you go to bed, you know where your pistol belt is, you know where your grenades are, you know where your helmet is, you know where your rifle is. And, okay, I know there's a battle going on. I'm grabbing all these things, and I'm throwing 2 grenades just right out in front of me, just kind of a left and right one. And I blew a couple of claymore mines, and now I've got my rifle, and I'm trying to find a target when the lights are on. And this man to my left, and I don't know who it was, but they were in agony, and the medic was right there with me, and there's satchel charges going off all over this hill. Just I don't know how many it was, but dozens, if not 25 or 30 of them, real quick like went off, and he said, I'm gonna go get him. And I do remember telling him, hey, hold on a minute, let's get this thing under control, then you can go help everybody. And this guy's moaning over there. Well, he's drawing satchel charges, and these things are going off 10 or 15 feet from us. And you could tell when one landed close to this man, the intensity of his screams got really blood-curdling. Well, anyway, he said, I've got to go help that man, and he started to move, and he was shot, and he died at my feet. And this thing with the lights going off and on, this went on for an hour, hour and a half. I mean, untold satchel charges went off. If I was guessing, I hate to say 1,000 explosions were on that hill that night, but I don't think I'd miss it very much. There's just lots of them.
Now, was there rifle fire too, or just the satchel charges?
I remember very little rifle fire. I mean, these were smart soldiers. There's undoubtedly some, but at this point, I mean, my eardrums were already broke. Or when they tested me, I had one eardrum broke and the other one just a loud ringing. And but a gunfire, you can still hear it, even when you still hear something. And I remember and I was misorientated a little bit about what was going on. To me, I mean, we're invincible. There ain't nobody going to do this to us. There's enemy out in front wanting to do something to us, and I'm going to take care of them. The enemy is in front of me. I had no idea we was already overrun, and I still didn't put 2 and 2 together when a satchel charge hit my leg, and I could feel it kind of bounce off my leg coming towards me. And I'm laying out, and I immediately started crawling forward just as fast as I could, and I'm hanging onto my helmet waiting for this thing to blow up, and it was a dud. It didn't blow up. I scooted myself back. I still didn't put two and two together. This came from behind me.
Mm-hmm.
But just a few minutes later, another one landed real close to me. I didn't know it. And when it blew up, it blew me over the side of the hill. And I lost all my spare ammo at that point. I did keep my helmet and I kept my rifle. And I remembered I just put a fresh magazine in my rifle, so I had a full magazine. But when I quit rolling around, I remembered looking back over my left shoulder, and my fatigue pants were on fire. And I've always said, I don't know how close that tassel charge was to me to actually set my pants on fire, but it had to be close. But anyway, all I can think about, they can see me. I mean, I'm on fire. I got little flickering flames on my fatigue pants. And this is when it's the scariest I ever was in my life, was at this point right here. I took my hand and I started swatting these little flickering flames out, and I got them out. I put them in. But my hand could feel my leg, but my leg could not feel my hand. And I did not know how bad I was hurt. And I'm telling you, it just sends chills up my spine thinking about that. But anyway, I'm there with a full magazine. My legs, fortunately I wasn't hurt very bad, but it was numb, and lights, the flare popped up there. And I've got a soldier in front of me, and I can remember this man just plain as day. He reminded me of a puppet. As I was going pop, 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 I could see a shoulder jerk. I could see a hip double up a little bit, and I just skip, pop, 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 pop. And something said, "You don't have any more ammo," and I quit shooting. And I remember reaching around and feeling the dust cover on my M16, and the bolt was closed. I thought, I've got a bullet in the chamber. And I said, right then and there, somebody's going to have to be trying to pick me up or stick a bayonet in me before I shoot him again. And I know I've got at least one bullet left. And come to find out, when morning came, and the battle ended shortly after that. They left. They pulled out and left. And I probably had 30 to 45 minutes of darkness before daylight. And with my eardrums broke, if anybody was saying anything, I couldn't hear it. And this was the new emotion I went through. I thought I was the only man left alive on that hill. Scaredest I ever. This superseded that other scared thing I was at. And but I do know when daylight came, I'm just kind of looking around, and I seen a helmet, and that's one of our kind of helmets, and it was a machine gun off to my right, and there was 3 guys there, and they seen me, and we did high signs to each other, and one of the assistant gunners started crawling towards me, and he had 2 grenades, and he had the pins pulled on him, but he's crawling towards me, holding them grenades. And I've always said he looked just like John Wayne if he had had a bayonet in his mouth, but he didn't have the bayonet. But he crawled up to me and he said, "You know what?" And I just pointed out, I said, that's the last place I seen any gooks is right there. And he threw both his hand grenades there, and they blew up. And guys were starting to stir then, and they picked me up. And choppers were coming in, and they carried me up to the hill, and I never seen so many bodies in my life as there was. We passed, and they were mostly gooks, the enemy soldiers. And I remember they threw me on the chopper, and they unloaded a few men, and then they threw the wounded. The wounded went first, and then the dead went on the next chopper, or the 3rd or 4th chopper, but. They sent me and a man named Mike Mueller. We were together. We got back to the rear, and they started ripping our clothes off and daubing us up with methylate and picking rocks and stuff out of us. And then they sent us back to a tent that had just cots in it. And we spent the rest of the day there. And the next morning, which would be 26 6 hours after the battle. We're wondering about where do we get some food at, and the nurse said, just right, there's a tent right there, they serve food. And me and this other guy, we could walk. And with Mike, you coming with us? And Mike said, my leg is killing me. And he had shrapnel and all up and down from his ankle all the way up to his shoulder on that one side. And okay, we'll bring you back some. Well, we went and did this, and we brought him back some food. He didn't feel like eating. And got the nurse in there, and he's telling her how his leg hurts. And she said, can you two guys help him down to the x-ray tent, which I swear is a block away. And I said, if we didn't look like a mess, hobbling down there with him. And anyway, we took him into the x-ray tent, and they're working on him and doing what they have to do there. And me and this other guy, we're looking at some of the x-ray pictures that are hanging up there. They brought some more out. We're looking at them, and you can see broken bones and what have you. Well, there was this one x-ray picture that showed a wound channel that was probably 14 inches long, 16 inches long, and there is a pristine, undeformed bullet right at the end of it. I said, wow, look at this. Somebody had a bullet in him. And this guy came in and said, hey, that's your buddy. He's got a bullet in him. And anyway, they gurneyed him out there on a table. And he said, Sergeant Moyer, can you go back to the tent and get my billfold and cigarettes? Sure. I hobble up there. I get this stuff, and I come back, and he is gone. He's on a helicopter going somewhere. Well, a couple of days later, they sent me to Cameron Bay to a rest and relaxation, convalescent type deal. And as I went through Da Nang, I ran into a sergeant that was doing the flight manifest, and I told him this same story. And he said, give that to me. I know what to do with that billfold. That's no big deal. And I thought about it. I don't know this man from Adam. There's like $80 in this billfold, and it's got his ID card and a few other things. I said, what the heck? I'm gonna put some faith in my fellow man. And I gave it to him, and I didn't talk to Mike for 25 years. It was about 25 years after the battle, and I was talking to the man that wrote the book, Keith Nolan. Talked to him for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I got to asking him about who he'd interviewed, and Mike Mueller's name came up. And I says, you've been talking to Mike Mueller? And he said, yeah, he lives up in Alaska. And I said, well, that's the same Mike Mueller I know. And he gave me his phone number, and I remember calling Mike, and this is Sergeant Moyer, and Mike stuttered terrible. He was comical to be around. And after we introduced each other, I said, Mike, did you get your billfold? And he said it caught up to him about 6 months later in a hospital, and he said the money was in there. And I said, that's a happy ending to a story right there.
All right, and as for you,
Yes.
Okay, so you went through Da Nang, you went down to Cameron Bay.
Yes.
Okay, and then did you convalesce there, or did you go someplace else, or?
No. When I left Da Nang and got to Cameron Bay, I had 2 months to go in the service, and they're going to send me home. No, they're not. They're going to send me to Cameron Bay and recover and go back to my unit. The only thing was the recovery took 2 months. And when I left Cameron Bay, I only had like 3 or 4 days to go in the service, and I got back to my unit. The company clerk gave me a clipboard, and I had no idea. I had done this in the statesides and in Europe. Signed off a post. You go to the library, the barber shop, and anybody you've done business with, you sign off that you don't owe them no money or anything like that. And he handed me this, and I says, we've got some of these things on Camp Evans, like a barber shop, and there was a massage parlor there, and I had to go get signatures. Of course, you got to go through the supply room, the arms room, and I did all that. Didn't take long, but I got to the arms room and I did have problems there. The man said, "Need to turn your rifle in." And I said, "I have no idea, not a clue where my rifle is." And I had to explain to him what happened when I was wounded. I said, they didn't give me a rifle to ride that chopper back home with. My rifle's on Hill 902 is the last place I seen it. And he said, "Well, we got to sit down and fill out some more paperwork. It is a combat loss." But that's all that amounted to. But he made me a little nervous when he asked me for a rifle, and he said, "We got a problem." But it was just, had to do some paperwork, combat loss.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now you're pretty much back in one piece, but you're also out of time. So,
Still got 1 day to go.
okay,
First sergeant came to me and he says, "Go to the arms room, check out a 45 and get some ammo for it. And I want you to go down to the chopper pad. We've got these coolers and they're full of sirloin steaks. I don't know, half a dozen coolers." He said, "I want you to make sure they get out to Fire Base O'Reilly. That's where our company's at. They're doing perimeter guard on it. And they've got the barbecue grill thing set up out there. And see that every man gets at least one, and there should be enough for every man to get two." And I thought, damn, I'm going back out to the field. But I said, I'm going to get to see my guys. This is going to be worth it. And this was probably around noon or 1 o'clock. And chopper came in, we loaded them on there, we flew out there, and we're doing the barbecue. And I'm going down to the bunker where my squad was, and I'm talking to them, and they're telling me about some of the things that happened right after 902, and how much time they got left to go, and be glad when this is over. And I said, "Well, I know what you're saying. I am glad that it's over for me." Well, I lollygagged around talking to these guys, and it got near 5 or 6 o'clock. I don't remember what the exact time was. But I went back up to the flight pad, and I asked somebody up there, I said, when's the next chopper going to be out here? And he said, "Tomorrow morning." I said, "Wait a minute, you mean there's no more choppers coming out here tonight?" And he said, "No, you're going to have to spend the night out here." I said, "You got to be kidding." Well, anyway, I went back down to where my guys were, and I said, "Yeah, you're not going to believe this. I got to spend another night here." Well, they had a Mad Minute that night. If you know what a Mad Minute is, that's where they test the firing of all the different positions to make sure there's not something that's not covered. I think there's somebody up there in a helicopter a long ways away, but they can watch what's going on, and they can see if they need to adjust any of the positions and all that. But for 1 minute, you get to fire your weapons. You don't get to throw grenades, and you don't get to blow your claymore mines, but they want to see where the firing's going to. And it's about 1 o'clock in the morning. They popped a red flare right up there, and I mean, that hill lit up, and I got my 45, and I'm John Wayne it, just firing it all over them till I'm out of bullets. And that's that. Went to bed and pulled a shift of guard, and next morning I got on a chopper, went back to Evans, got on a helicopter, went to Da Nang, and got manifested on a flight. And we rolled down the runway, and we was just screaming and hollering and whooping. I mean, we were happy that plane got off the ground, and somebody said, "Get this thing out over the ocean, get it away from this country." And I know all the stops I had when I went over there, we were virtually nonstop going back. It was a long flight, but I was surprised the plane could go that far without refueling. But
so where'd you go to in the States?
back to where I started, Fort Lewis, and I got that old steak dinner that everybody from Vietnam got when we got there. We did some. Really, they were not very thorough physicals.
Mm-hmm.
Checked our teeth and a few. It didn't amount to a bunch.
Mm.
And we went back to the barracks, and they said, take your boots and tie the shoelaces together, throw them out in the middle of the floor, and your fatigues and all that stuff, and you can go home and Yeah, I went home in my dress greens.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of guys, they had a big pile of clothes and stuff there. Well, I knew I'd be going deer hunting. I had a father-in-law that loved to deer hunt, and I knew so I went back there and I found me 2 pair of boots that were my size, and I put them in my, and I remember the last place we had to check out of was the re-enlistment officer, the guy that wants you to sign on for another tour of this. And that's when I told him, I said, y'all taught me how to dance, and then you took me to the dance, and I want no more dancing. And he kind of laughed, and he said, I understand. And but then it was right then they said, do not deviate from your plan leaving this place here. Whether you get on the green bus that's going to the train station or the yellow bus that's going to the airport or something, there's another colored bus too. It says, do not get off this bus. The protesters are right outside the gate. And I thought, you know, I was so naive. I didn't even realize that kind of stuff was going on. And I thought, what in the hell are they protesting? What? I mean, we didn't do anything wrong. And that's something else. I want to put this on the end of this. One of the things I'm most proud of, there's a couple of things. My entire squad made it home. Some of them shot up pretty bad, but nobody died. And the other thing is, I do not remember anything we did that would be called an atrocity. We did what soldiers did. And I've always kind of felt like this has helped me with my own personal healing process of Vietnam.
All right. Now, at this point, you've completed your enlistment. So do you get discharged, or do you have to go someplace else for that?
I'm done.
Okay, you were
When I
out.
left Fort Lewis, I was done.
All right. So now that you're out, what did you wind up doing?
Well, you know, I had mustering out pay. I had a little bit of money, not a lot. And from September to middle part of December, this money lasted. And my father-in-law and his wife, they're getting kind of nervous about, aren't you going to try to find a job? And all right, I guess I got to get a job. I went down and it's probably the first December, but I applied for unemployment, and they said, well, you can get it for a while, but not very long. You know, okay. And it didn't amount to much anyway. But I remembered what I told that enlistment officer when I signed up, that I had an uncle that worked for the phone company, and I thought I might want to do that. I went down to the local place here in Springfield, the phone office, and I put in an application, and they said, can you come back I think it was on a Friday, come back Monday, and we'll do some testing. And I did, and this testing lasted 2 weeks, and all of a sudden I'm getting paid for this. And I'm thinking, no, you know, I haven't even been hired, and I'm getting a paycheck. And I remember my clerk at that time at the phone company, she asked if I was a Vietnam vet. And I said, yeah, I just came from Vietnam. And she says, well, we're going to apply you into an on-the-job training program. The government will compensate you some money. And, well, hey, I'll bite this, go ahead and apply for it. Well, anyway, that lasted, I didn't get anything from that until 6 months after the phone company did hire me. And at the end of the 6 months, I got this check. It looked like a tax refund check. And I thought, what in the hell is this all about? And I was just grinning at the number. What it was like $120 a month, but it's 6 months worth of it. Now I'm pretty poor back then. I mean, we're living payday to payday, and I've just got this monster check. And I went to work the following, and I asked this clerk about this. He said, oh yeah, that's that on-the-job training. They're going to supplement your income, and every time we give you a raise, that's going to get docked a little bit, and you get this for 2 years. Well, okay, the next 6 months it was a little less. The next 6 months it was a little less, and the next I think the last one, it was $50 or $60 a month. but it was a very neat deal. Didn't even know I was going to get it, and I got it, and that was tax-free money. That's it wasn't. You didn't have to list that as income. But I wound up spending 30 years with the phone company. Kind of liked it.
And did you always stay in this area, kind of Missouri, Arkansas?
Missouri.
Yeah.
And southern Missouri,
Yeah.
mostly. I did get over to the Boot Hill, worked a little while over there, and I got up to Kansas City and worked a little while up there. But always wound up back in the Springfield area. And I was a lineman, cable splicer, a repairman, and I was an installer, did a lot of different things. And I know a lot of Vietnam vets don't like to be around people, don't like to be in an office with a lot of people around them. You know, we just didn't like being in a crowd. That was, and me being with the phone company, working by myself out, you know, I did have to go and knock on the door and say, hey, I'm here to fix your phone, what have you. Or if I was splicing, I'm out in the ditch putting the cable together. But it's by myself. And I always said that I felt like this helped me adjust a little bit. I didn't get any negative feedback, is what I'm saying.
Right. All right. I guess now kind of look back at the time that you spent in the service and sort of the whole of it, not just Vietnam. What do you think you took out of it, or how did it affect you positively or negatively?
Well, I'll say this for the military. They taught me how to live payday to payday. They taught me how to budget my money. I mean, when I was a private, it's got to last 30 days. Ain't nobody going to give you no money. And they taught me how to manage a paycheck. And that's one of the best things that I think, of course, I think I grew up faster than I wanted to. It's, you know, I'd never been responsible for other people. Even when I was in Germany, I didn't feel like I was responsible for the guys that was right there with me. But in Vietnam, I did feel responsible for them men. And you can't help but worry about, you know, you get a new guy, you know, how's he going to fit in? Is he going to pull a bonehead and get somebody hurt or what have you? And that's a neat thing to experience that. It makes you nervous at first, and when you get these new people. But I'll say this: 101st, it's an outstanding outfit. I think it's the most prestigious outfit in all of military, Marines, Navy, whatever. And very proud to have had to serve with them.
And you brought all your men back.
All, you know, when I went home, I still had but I found out later they all made it home. But like I say, boy, there's a bunch of them shot up pretty bad, though.
All right. Well, it's a good story, and I appreciate you taking the time to tell it to me today.
Thank you, Jim.